Welcome everybody. Nice to see everyone. How's everybody? Let me know. My comments are up and running. So today, what are we going to talk about today? First, let's talk about the embassies. Everybody's emailing us. Yes, we are bringing people over. Yes, the non-immigrant visas are being issued. But as I have stated before, every embassy is its own kind of microcosm of things. So, for example, the embassy sometimes gets locked down for 2 weeks because there's a spike of COVID cases in the country. We've had that happen. What else? We have had recently some movement on Fianc Visas in Poland. We emailed the embassy and they said, yes, we're issuing them. Please have your client come in. So I know that people hear things, oh, this embassy is open, that embassy is open. And technically, yes, most of them are open, but things do change daily. Sometimes we'll bring somebody over and then the next day the embassy will lock down for 2 weeks or a spike will happen in the country. It's happening less and less, but less and less. It's happening in India right now, and I think it's going to spill over to other countries in the region. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a slowdown of processing of visas over there. Our clients that are tied to the embassy in Moscow, of course, have their other difficulties that they're dealing with. That if you do have a case with an embassy that is assigned to a Moscow embassy, there are certain workarounds that we have, things that we could do. Reach out to us. We can definitely talk to you about that. In terms of expediting certain cases, I know it's frustrating because people have been waiting sometimes for over 2 years on cases that usually take a lot less time. This is obviously due to COVID. There are cases that are just difficult that we're working with the embassies to resolve the situation, but majority of the cases that are stuck have nothing other than COVID in the way, right? In terms of expediting, we have had a lot of luck with expediting cases for people whose significant others are citizens or green card holders and who are frontline workers who work in the medical fields and who are called essential workers. But not every embassy is responsive to that. So it is possible that we've had a few embassies where we were able to expedite things, and I guess the word got out and everybody started expediting things, so the embassy just stopped responding to our request to expedite it and basically let us know that we just have to wait like everybody else. So please be patient. Stay in touch with us. We're doing everything we can. Every single person who comes here whose case is done is a little victory for us. So we never put it on a back burner. We're always working on it. It just depending on what embassy you're assigned to, what part of the world you're in, what kind of case you have, there may or may not be things that we can do. If there are things we could do, we will do them. So that has to do with embassies because I think that's the biggest amount of inquiries I'm having recently. Like, when is my loved one coming? When can we see them here? Right? We're doing everything that we can. We did get a few visas over the last week, so things are definitely happening. You just have to monitor the situation in the world. So that's that. Last week I talked about 601A waiver for people who have crossed the border. This week I wanted to talk about the 601 waiver, what it applies to. but I think I'm going to postpone it to next week. I wanted to talk to you about the state of affairs in the United States as it pertains to immigration. I'm getting a lot of phone calls where people say, oh, we know that now this these immigrants or those immigrants are just eligible for citizenship or a green card. No, nothing major has changed in the immigration since Biden took office. There have been some changes that are more procedural in nature, that have to do with enforcement, that have to do with people with you know deportation orders, that have to do more with the discretion and how things are processing. There has not been any blanket amnesty. There has not been any blanket change of law that would all of a sudden allow a person with a deportation order who has previously crossed the border to just go for citizenship. That did not happen. I want you to please be careful. We're getting so many phone calls of people, oh, we went there and they said to us, no problem, just pay us this much money and we'll just give it to you. No, go to reputable firms that, that will give you the news. Follow us on Facebook. A lot of us attorneys are doing, these talks, because every time there is a talk of amnesty, and every time there is a big change in the law, there are a lot of people who are being taken advantage of, and then they can get stuck for decades, because their case was botched or something that was filed that wasn't supposed to be filed. And we do have examples like that in our office where people have made the wrong choice in the 90s and are still dealing with the consequences of those choices. So I just want everybody to be diligent and to be careful. And to be honest with you, if it sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is to be too good to be true, right? Get a second opinion if you want. Sometimes I always tell people if there's nothing else I can do for you right now, that doesn't mean there's nothing I won't be able to do for you ever. Unlike a lot of state laws and a lot of sometimes even federal laws that stay stagnant for decades at a time, immigration is um, very fast paced, changing body of law. There are things I couldn't do 6 months ago that I could do in certain circumstances. So it's always evolving. There are always new regulations, procedural things, proposals, things that we could do. The traveling you have to be diligent about, because we've had a case where a person was granted a visa and wanted to travel through another country to visit a relative, and we did warn them. We told them, listen, we advise you strongly to come straight to the United States without any layovers, without any stoppings, because when you're given an immigrant visa, you're giving, let's say, 6 months or 4 months to enter the US. You have to enter the US within that time, or your visa will expire and you're potentially looking at having to do the whole process all over again, and sometimes that process took years. So right now, is it a good time with an immigrant visa, not a green card, not a citizen, just a visa to go visit another country? Well, think about it this way. What if you end up in India and you end up there on a Saturday when the administration announces that on Tuesday the borders to, or the main travel to India, or majority of travel to and from India will be, well, actually from India coming to the US, will be on a lockdown. And within hours, every plane, every mode of transportation to the US is sold out. Oh, and you're stuck, right? You don't know how long this is going to be going there. It could be for 2 weeks, it could be for a year. Look at the travel between US and the EU. Um, it, I don't I don't know if it's a smart choice. Traveling right now in general is kind of worrisome because you just don't know if things are going to get locked down. I'm not saying, don't travel, not specifically. I'm just saying just be vigilant and diligent about what countries and what travel is makes sense, and what position you're in. Obviously, if you're a US citizen, for example, the embassy will always process even emergency situations for you. Um, but how fast things are going to get resolved up is up in the air. Um, when it comes to waivers, and when it comes to processes in immigration, every case is different in what respect. In immigration, it matters a lot, dates, times. When it comes to criminal records, it matters sometimes down to the subsection of the offense that was committed. And, people sometimes tell me this is a big issue that has come up in the last few weeks. Um, I've spoken to people who say to me things like, oh, I have a few arrests, but they're very minor. Minor. So, something that can be a misdemeanor or a minor offense under the state law, can be a big deal under federal immigration law. Something that can be rather insignificant, coupled with another arrest or offense that you may have, can create a situation where you become deportable or inadmissible to the United States, right? So, oh, I had a couple of arrests, but they were really minor. If you had a couple of arrests, we're going to want to see the dispositions on those cases. Sometimes it's even important for us to go beyond just getting disposition, and a significant portion of our cases get delayed because we are contacting the court and the reporters in order to get the actual transcript of the hearing, in which you were sentenced to something or you pled to something. We're not delaying your case on purpose. There's no benefit to us in it. We're actually trying to protect you. We're trying to make sure you don't take any steps that will negatively affect your future in this country. And sometimes it turns out to be nothing. And then, you can feel safe, knowing everything, all the dispositions are yours, would provide your record of everything. But sometimes it does turn out to be something, and we let the client know that they cannot move forward until they deal with, one or several state or federal issues. For example, this is a lot in the news right now. I know a lot of people asking me this question when it comes to marijuana. There are a list of controlled substances under the federal law. Pretty extensive. It has obviously all, the big players are on it: heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine, marijuana, MDMA. It has other things on it as well. So people often say to me, but marijuana is now legal. That doesn't, depending what state you're in, doesn't mean that what you were arrested for it, if it had to do with marijuana, went away. There's a big difference for being arrested single possession for personal use under 30 grams, which is, our exception to that statute. There's a big difference between that and having something like possession with intent to distribute, even if it's a small amount. Those are very different. Those are very different outcomes for the purposes of your um, immigration status. And all of those nuance is why we always ask people who have criminal dispositions to work with us in order to either obtain them or provide them, to analyze them, which, takes obviously attorneys time. to do. This is also important for citizenship. If you are applying for citizenship and you have had arrests, we cannot move forward until we obtain and review all of your dispositions, right? If it's one, obviously you could go to the court and get it provided to us. We'll take a look at it. But when you tell me that I have had 4 arrests in several different let's say states, I don't remember the exact dates. I'm not exactly sure what I pled guilty to. I know about what it is. We can't move forward with an application like that because you may remember something that wasn't. You may think that at the time, oh, I just got a misdemeanor or whatever, but then the transcript of the hearing or the disposition will show something else, which will change your eligibility for citizenship, which will change my advice to you whether you should move forward, or hold off, whether you should renew your green card, and so on and so forth. Criminal immigration is one of the most complicated intersections of law because you have to analyze both the criminal record and how it relates to, the federal law. Because remember, immigration is a federal law. And just because a state, for example, legalized the controlled substance, if that substance is still a controlled substance, meaning it's still illegal under federal law, the fact that that state legalized it doesn't in of itself relieve you from consequences of being convicted of a possession or intent to distribute, or whatever the case may be with that substance. A lot of states have different tools with dealing with different types of conviction. For example, one of the most popular one available pretty much everywhere is a pardon by the governor of that state. Let's say you have a complicated immigration criminal conviction. There are times where you cannot move forward, you cannot do anything immigration wise until the underlying conviction goes away or is transformed into something else. There are certain states have like clemency boards, every state has a different setup for it. But there are avenues in which you can present a case to the governor or the clemency board of your state, asking them to take away, make it disappear the conviction that you have. The requirements for pardons, how they're done, when they're done, whether they're done, are highly subjective. It depends on so many different things in each and every given state. But we do have several of those pending, and sometimes there are people for whom there is no other way but to seek a pardon, because until that happens, they will not be able to move forward. So that's that. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about work authorization. So there's a very complicated situation with the work authorizations that's happening right now. In 2020, the rules were changed when it comes to immigration, comes to work authorizations based when you're filing for work authorizations based on a pending asylum, or what happens to work authorizations when you are seeking review of the denial of your case, meaning when you appealed your case. The rules have been changed to state that if you are appealing your case, you no longer can obtain work authorization. They're now going to renew it. There's litigation pending on that. There has been litigation pending on your eligibility for work authorization if you have an asylum. If you have never applied for work authorization and you have a pending asylum case, and that would be your first application for work authorization, contact an attorney. There are things that an attorney can do or advise you on how to do or do research if you just file it. chances are it will be rejected because there's a multi-level complicated litigation that is happening. Essentially, the time when you become eligible for work authorization based on asylum was changed. How you entered now matters. What happened when you entered now matters, among with several other things. Fees matter, whether you're going to have to pay them or not. Processing time was affected. So it's a very multi-level complicated situation. But if you have a pending asylum that is rather recent and you have never applied for a work authorization, you are strongly advised to speak to an immigration practitioner before you move forward. Okay. I think I talked about everything today that I wanted to talk to you about. I know I was going to talk about the waivers, and I will. I'll talk to you about it next time. We'll talk about, what happens if you lied at the embassy interview or presented some fraudulent documents, or what happens if you came into the country with someone else's or a fake passport. What happens, if you were accused or USCIS made a determination that your previous marriage was fraudulent, or was entered into for the purposes of obtaining a green card. We will talk about all of that next week, or at least as much of it as I can get to. We will talk about it next week. All right. Again, send me your questions, comments, tell me what you want to hear about, and I will talk about it next time. It was very nice to see everybody. Stay tuned in, email, call, we're always here. Thank you and have a great weekend, everybody.